Hello everyone, I'm Rovelyn Lambating and I'm going to discuss the nature of decision making in Chapter 8, Decision Making and Problem Solving. This chapter describes many different perspectives of decision making. We start by examining the nature of decision making and distinguish it from problem solving. Next, we describe several different approaches to understanding the decision making process. We then identify and discuss related behavioral aspects of decision making. Finally, we discuss creativity, a key ingredient in many effective decisions. After watching and listening this chapter, you should be able to describe the nature of decision making and distinguish it from problem solving. Discuss the rational approach to decision making. Identify and discuss the primary behavioral aspects of decision making. Discuss the nature of creativity and relate to decision making and problem solving. The nature of decision making. Decision making is the process of choosing from among several alternatives. Process of making choices by identifying a decision, gathering information, and assessing alternative resolutions. So, we have plan A and plan B in making decision. In case the plan A won't work, we have a plan B as an alternative. Problem solving is finding the answer to a question, form of decision making in which the issue is unique and alternatives must be developed and evaluated without the aid of program decision rule. So problem solving is the act of defining a problem, determining the cause of the problem, identifying, prioritizing, and selecting alternatives for a solution, and implementing a solution. So every problem has a solution. So we must face it, and we just have to identify every problem to solve it. Figure 8.1 show the basic elements of decision making. Types of decision making: program decision and non-program decision. Program decision is highly structured. The goals are clear and well known. The decision-making procedure is already established. The sources and channels of information are clearly defined. So in program decision is already planned and the decision maker know what we're going to do when the problem occurs. Decision rule is a statement that tells a decision maker which alternative to choose based on the characteristics of the decision situation. The appropriate decision rule is used whenever the same situation is encountered. The decision maker will be the one to accept or reject the decision, depends on the situation. Non-program decision is a decision that recurs infrequently and for which there is no previously established decision rule. There are times problem occurs in time we didn't expect. The decision made has no specific plan structured. Because of the rare situation, it requires problem solving, but without the aid of the decision rule. Decision-making conditions. Decisions are made to bring about desired outcomes, but the information available about those outcomes varies in three conditions: condition of certainty, condition of risk, condition of uncertainty. Condition of certainty. The manager knows what the outcomes of each alternative to a given action will be, but has enough information to estimate the probabilities of various outcomes. The decision maker or the manager has full and needed information to make a decision. Decision maker knows with reasonable certainty what the alternatives are, what conditions are associated with each alternative, and the outcome of each alternative. Under conditions of certainty, accurate, measurable, and reliable information on which to base decision is available. Condition of risk. The decision maker cannot know with certainty what the outcome of a given action will be, but has enough information to estimate the probabilities of various outcomes. We doesn't know what the future brings, so in making decision, there is a risky condition. Conditions of risk should seek to identify, quantify, and absorb risk whenever possible. Condition of uncertainty. The decision maker lacks enough information to estimate the probability of possible outcomes. When the future environment is unpredictable, the decision maker is not aware of all available alternatives, the risks associated with each, and the consequences of each alternatives or their probabilities. That's it for the nature of decision making. Thank you.
My name is Pamela M. Morris, and my topic is the rational approach to decision making. The rational decision making approach is a systematic, step-by-step process for making decisions. It further assumes that the organization is dedicated to making logical choices and doing economically, and that is managed by decision makers who are entirely objective and have complete information. The steps in rational decision making. The first one is to state the situational goal, the goal of the marketing department. The second one is to identify the problem. The purpose of a problem identification is to gather information that bears on a goal. Reliable information is very important in this step. Inaccurate information can lead to the unnecessary decision or to no decision when we are required. Determine the decision type. The decision maker is must determine program or in non-program decisions. Program decision, program marketing decision may be called for its analysis reveals that competitors are outspending the company on print advertising. The unprogrammed decision is result to poor decisions if the situation is wrongly diagnosed to decision makers waste time and resources seeking a new solution to an old problem. Generate alternatives. The rational process assumes that decision makers will generate all the possible alternative solutions to the problem. 5. Evaluate alternatives. Evaluation involves accessing all possible alternatives in terms in predetermined decision criteria. The evaluation process includes number 1, describing the outcomes or benefits of each alternatives. Number 2, evaluating the anticipated cost of each alternative. And last, estimating the uncertainties and risks associated alternative. The decision makers does not have perfect information regarding the outcomes of all alternatives. Number 6. Choose an alternative. Choosing an alternative is usually the most crucial step in decision-making process. Selecting alternative with the highest possible payoff based on the benefits, costs, risks, and uncertainties of all alternatives. 7. Implement the plan. Implementation puts the decision into actions. It builds on the commitment and motivation of those who participated in the decision-making process, both for individual commitment or motivation. Number 8. Control, measure, and adjust. The rational decision-making process, the outcomes of the decision are measured and compare the desired goal. Number 9. Strength and weaknesses of the rational approach. Rational approach has several strengths. It forces the decision maker to consider a decision in a logical, consequential manner, and the in-depth analysis of alternatives enables the decisions makers to choose on the basis information rather than emotion or social pressure. It is very important because you need to know your strengths and weaknesses. Evidence-based decision making. It is defined as the commitment to identify and utilize the best theory and data available to make decisions. First, face the hard fact and build a culture in which people are encouraged to tell the truth even it is unpleasant. Number 2, be committed to the fact-based decision making, which means being committed to getting the best evidence and use it to guide actions. Number 3, treat your organization as an unfinished prototype, encourage implementation and learning by doing. 4, look for the risks and drawback in what people recommend. Even the best medicine has side effects. And lastly, number 5, avoid the basing decision on untreated but strongly held beliefs, what you've done in the past, and uncritical benchmarking on what winners do.
Good day, everyone. I'm Kizia Asa Malinog, and I will discuss the behavioral approach to decision making. In this part, we are to identify and discuss the primary behavioral aspects of decision making. The rational approach assumes that managers operate logically and rationally, while the behavioral approach acknowledges the role and importance of human behavior in decision making process. Herbert A. Simon was one of the first experts to recognize that decisions are not always made with rationality and logic. He was subsequently awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics. This topic composes Herbert's view of decision making, which is now called the administrative model. It describes how decisions often actually are made. Just to let you know that Simon was not advocating that managers use the administrative model, but instead describing how managers make decisions. So the administrative model of decision making argues that managers use bounded rationality, rules of thumb, sub-optimizing, and satisficing in making decisions. I am going to further explain these in the next slide. The administrative model is a broadly accurate and or principle based on experience or practice rather than theory. So there are three administrative model presented. So first is the bounded rationality. It is the idea that decision makers cannot deal with information about all aspects and alternatives. It is that pertains to a problem and therefore choose to tackle some meaningful subset of it. It is a belief that while people may want to find the greatest solution to a problem, the demands of digesting all relevant idea or information or data, rating all visible options, and selecting one of the best are above most decision makers' ability. People accept less than ideal solutions as a result of a procedure that is neither exhaustive nor fully rational. So next is the sub-optimizing. It is knowingly accepting less than the best possible outcome to avoid unintended negative effects on other aspects of the organization. To minimize unanticipated negative repercussions on other departments, product lines, or choices, the decision maker must often sub-optimize. The last one for the administrative model is the satisficing. It examines alternatives only until a solution that meets minimal requirements is found. This is to evaluate options just until a solution that fits the bare minimum criteria is discovered, then giving up on finding a better one. A manager should always be aware of various behavioral influences that might influence decision making in addition to those mentioned in the administrative model. There are six other behavioral forces in decision making. So, first is the political forces in decision making. Political forces can play a major role in how decisions are made. One major element of politics is the coalitions. It is especially relevant to decision making. A coalition is an informal alliance of individuals or groups formed to achieve a common goal. This common goal is often preferred as decision alternative. For example, coalitions of stockholders frequently band together to force a board of directors to make a certain decision. Next one, the number two is the next one is the intuition. Intuition is innate belief about something without conscious consideration. Intuition or an instinct. This is when managers will occasionally act on a hunch or because something feels right to them. However, this sensation is seldom random. Rather, it is built on years of expertise and practice making comparable judgments. The third one is the escalation of commitment. This occurs when a decision maker stays with a decision even when it appears to be wrong. When consumers acquire shares in a firm, for example, they frequently refuse to sell it despite price decreases. They decided on a strategy of buying the stock in the hopes of generating a profit and sticking with it, even as losses mounted. The next one is the risk propensity and decision making. It is the extent to which a decision maker will is willing to gamble in making a decision. Other managers are extremely aggressive in decision making and are willing to take risks. The fifth one is the ethical and decision making. This is a person's beliefs about the constitutes right and wrong behavior. Ethical behavior is that which conforms to generally accepted social norms. Unethical behavior does not conform to generally accepted norms. Some decisions made by managers may have little or nothing to do with their own personal ethics, but many other decisions are influenced by the manager's ethics. For example, decisions involving such desperate issues as firing and hiring employees, dealing with customers and suppliers, setting wages and assigning tasks, and maintaining one's expense account are all subject to ethical influences. And of course, managers can make fatal personal decisions simply because they choose to ignore the difference between right and wrong. The sixth one or the last one is the prospect theory and decision making. This argues that when people make decisions under a condition of risk, they are more motivated to avoid losses than they are to seek gains. The theory further argues that all else being equal, people are more motivated to avoid losses than they are to seek gains. An integrated approach to decision making. The integrated approach to decision making combines the steps of the rational approach with the conditions in the behavioral approach to create a more realistic approach for making decisions in organizations. Because of the unrealistic demands of the rational approach and the limited short term orientation of the behavioral approach, neither is entirely satisfactory. However, the worthwhile features of each can be combined into a practical approach to decision making, as shown in figure 8.4, as we all can see in the slide. This is a process or the practical approach to decision making. They may have a similarities with the rational approach, but they have also a difference, as we all can see in the slide. The practical model applies some of the conditions recognized by the behavioral approach to the rational approach to decision making. Although similar to the rational model, the practical approach recognizes personal limitations at each point or step in the process. So that would be all for the behavioral approach to decision making. Thank you.
Creativity, problem solving, and decision making. Creativity is the ability of an individual to generate new ideas or to conceive of new perspectives on existing ideas. Creativity can play a role in how a problem or decision situation is defined, what alternatives are identified, and how each is evaluated. Creativity can also enable a manager to identify a new way of looking at things. So when we say creativity, it is something a person's ability to generate new ideas or to conceive of new perspective on existing ideas. So if you have a certain problem, you may able to find a solution in much more easier way. Creativity can also have enables the manager to find solutions in different ways or also seeing problems in much more easier or in the other perspective. There are three types of creative individual. One is the background experiences and creativity. Two is the personal traits and creativity. And three is the cognitive abilities and creativity. Let's start with the background experiences and creativity. Researchers have observed that many creative individuals were raised in an environment in which creativity was nurtured. Example of these people are Mozart, who was raised in a family of musicians and began composing and performing music in the age of 6. Next is Thomas Edison's creativity was nurtured by his mother. However, people with a background experiences very different from theirs have also been creative. People like Frederick Douglass, who has very limited opportunities for education, but nonetheless, his powerful oratory and creative thinking helped lead to the Emancipation Proclamation in which outlawed slavery in the United States. Next is the personal traits and creativity. Certain personal traits have also been linked into creativity in individuals. The traits shared by most creative people are openness, an attraction to complexity, high levels of energy, independence and autonomy, strong self-confidence, and a strong belief that one is in fact creative. Individuals who possesses these traits are most likely to be creative than those who do not have them. Cognitive abilities and creativity. Cognitive abilities are individuals' power to think intelligently and to analyze situations and data effectively. Intelligence may be a precondition for individual creativity, but although most creative people are highly intelligent, not all intelligent people necessarily are creative. Creativity is also linked with the ability to think divergently and convergently. Divergent thinking is a skill that allows people to see the difference between situations, phenomena, or events, while convergent thinking is a skill that allows people to see similarities between situations, phenomena, or events. Creative people are generally very skilled at both divergent and convergent thinking. There are four types of creative processes. One is the preparation, two is the incubation, three is the insight, and four is the verification. Let's start with the preparation. The creative process normally begins with a period of preparation. Formal education and training are usually the most efficient ways of becoming familiar with a vast amount of research and knowledge. To make a creative contribution to business management or business services, individuals most usually receive formal trainings and education in business. So to cut the chase short, preparations is something you gain more knowledge through the formal education and through training. Incubation. It is the second stage of less intense conscious concentration during which creative person lets the knowledge and ideas acquired during preparation mature and develop. It is a curious aspect of incubation. It is that it is often helped along by pauses and concentrated rational thought. Some creative people rely on physical activity such as jogging or swimming to provide a break from thinking. Others may listen or read to music. Sometimes sleep may even supply the needed to pause. Next is the insight. Insight represents a coming together of all scattered thoughts and ideas that were maturing during incubation. It may occur suddenly or develop slowly over time. Insight is the stage in the creative process in which all of the scattered thoughts and ideas were maturing during incubation. So, it is also may occur suddenly or develop slowly over time. It can be triggered by some external events, such as a new experience or an encounter with new data that forces the individual to think about the old issues or the problem. It can be completely internal event in which patterns of thought finally generate into a new understanding. Lastly is the verification. It determines the validity of truthfulness of the insight. For many creative ideas. Verification includes scientific experiments to determine whether or not the insight actually leads to the results expected. Verification may also include the development of a product or a service prototype. A prototype is one or a very small number of products that build just to see whether the ideas behind this product usually work. Product prototypes are rarely sold to the public but are very valuable in verifying the insights developed in the creativity process. Once the new product or services is developed, verification in the marketplace is the ultimate test of creative idea behind it. Lastly, is the enhancing creativity in organizations. One important method for enhancing creativity is to make part of the organization's culture, often through explicit goals. Another important part of enhancing creativity is to reward creativity successes while being careful to not punish creative failures. Managers who wish to enhance and promote creativity in their organizations can do so in a very variety of ways. One important method for enhancing creativity is to make it a part of organization's culture, often for explicit goals. Firms that truly want to stress creativity, such as 3M and Rubbermaid, for example, state goals that some percent or future revenues are to be gained from new products. This clearly communicates that creativity and innovation are valued. Another important part of enhancing creativity is to reward creative successes while being careful to not punish creative failures. Many ideas that seem worthwhile on paper fail to pan out in reality. In the first person to come up with an idea that fails is fired or otherwise punished. Others in the organizations will become more cautious in their own work, and as a result, fewer creative ideas will emerge.